There you go. Okay. How's everybody doing? My name's Frank Indiviglio with the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory at NOAA in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm going to tell you a little about the scheduling environment that we put together for the NCRC Joint Center with Oakridge National Laboratory. But before I get into the technical parts, I'm going to show you where everything ends up. So if you look here on the screen, you'll see an animation of sea surface temperature. We're focusing here on the upper Pacific, the northern Pacific, around the Aleutian Island. And this shows basically a finished product of what our science is. This is one variable that comes out of the model. And really, I'm not going to go into the science, but the important parts are the definition within the model. You can clearly see sea surface temperature. Hey, how you doing? Sea surface temperature swirls and eddies. And that's something that we can do now on Gaia. We didn't have that kind of resolution before, so this is one of the recent models run on Gaia, and I'll tell you about how this wants to change. Oh, there we go. Sorry. All right. So this is how the model is basically put together. Right. This is how we get to that animation at the end. The Earth is cubed from the top of the atmosphere to the bottom of the ocean. Each processor gets a portion of the atmosphere, the ocean, and the land. And they all basically update across each node. Within the models, we do take human factors also into account. So solar other factors, so solar radiation, volcanoes, ecosystem, and then even human factors go into the model. So the models, in addition to getting a higher resolution, actually are getting more complicated as we add these new features into it. Okay, so NOAA is spread out across the country, as any government agency is. I'm in Princeton, which is the red dot there. We have operational research computer centers in Boulder, and we have one out in Maryland as well. We do have two other operational sites. One is in Fairmont, West Virginia, and Reston, Virginia, and Orlando. But we're going to talk really about our two newest computing sites, one at Oakridge here, and its interactions with Princeton, New Jersey. And these are all connected with the yellow triangles, which is our agency network called N-Wave. It's in full production now, and it connects all the R&D sites across the country. All right, so we just went through all the local HPC centers, and before we had Gaia and Zeus, all these local HPC centers had their own resources. Users were able to walk downstairs and tap me on the shoulder or tap somebody else on the shoulder and figure out their problems and kind of take a look at the system. So we moved to a remote computing model here, where the users obviously were used to local resources. Because of that, their workflows are tightly coupled, right? Events were automated, they were packed densely together. And the two requirements they really had for us were, one, that the workflow needed to stay automated, whether or not it was happening here or somewhere else. And two, we needed a scheduling platform that was capable of supporting these multi-site events. So for our scheduler, we chose to use Adaptive, and it's been working out pretty well for us. So in our new model, we have archival and post-processing centers at the local user center. So we have all the users' archives and post-processing located in New Jersey and Boulder, with our centralized computing in Oakridge. The shared computing resources are located remotely, and we have to allocate now across not only across science groups within the center, but across organizations within the R&D infrastructure. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, let's talk about what we have down in Oakridge. So the system at Oakridge is basically in two parts. We call it Gaia. It's really two compute systems. This is the C2, as we call it, which is the new compute cluster installed around this time last year. It's a 721 teraflop computer. It's a Cray XE6. It's about 80,000 cores, 156 terabytes of memory. This is the main work engine for our large-scale compute. It's complemented by a second, smaller system. We use it for interactive, smaller model development. It was recently upgraded to match C2, so it's now an XE6 as well. When it was originally installed, it was an XT6, so it got a Gemini backplane, some newer processors over the summer, and it went into production in September. And it's been carrying the load as well. So for the site, we have about a 1.1 petaflop capacity, which is a lot bigger than we were used to at our local centers. So we were able to grow our science up with these systems and share them across multiple domains. So for remote computing, what were the challenges that we really ran into? Excuse me, managing multiple job streams that span multiple sites. So a job will start at Oakridge and end in Princeton, or end in Boulder, and in Fairmont. We have data transfers now for everything that we didn't have before. Multiple batch resources. We have C1, C2, and the post-processing at each site. And we have two really large types of workflows. One is the climate workflow, which moves very slowly through the system. It runs for 1,000 years and then moves on, and then post-processing analysis starts. We have very short run, time-dependent runs for forecasts. So the forecast runs at 4 hours. It runs every 4 hours. It needs to run every 4 hours. The climate stuff runs for months at a time before it finishes its walk through the experimental stages. And there's lots of moving parts, so it's really hard to manage. There are parts for data transfers. There's each job running, each segment that runs. So it's a lot to manage. It's a lot to oversee, and we need to kind of grow our resource managers up to support that. And that was one of our biggest challenges, because it's hard to put the monitoring together across sites. That was one of our biggest challenges, and we're working through that now. It's still a challenge for us, but we're working through that with the scheduler, and that's actually coming together pretty well. So for our grid scheduling, what do we need it to do? We needed to do accounting for multiple sites, prioritization based on project and queues across both sites, and the actual scheduling. Like I said, job streams will start at Oakridge and end in Princeton. Sometimes they'll do the reverse, but not often. So the jobs actually get handed off between instances. The batch run starts on the research system, and as the data is produced, it's moved out to GFDL, archived, post-processed, and analyzed. And this is all done automatically. There's no user intervention from once they start their run. All the authentication is done over X509, and the certificate follows the job. So if a user logs in every 30 days, their jobs can run, and they keep a running job stream and data movement going the whole time. Okay, so on data movement, we've tried just about everything, from CP to grid FTP. And we had a lot of trouble initially with data integrity. Transfers would fail with some tools. We'd have to go back and retransfer or find the error, which was actually the hardest part of tracking all these things down in the workflow. A lot of the transfer tools left us wanting for a little bit more checking. We've actually moved to checkpointing everything, and in response to not finding the absolute right tool, we've actually gone out and written our own copy tool. It uses all of these, or most of these tools underneath, but it kind of separates the user from having to know how to do grid FTP transfers, how to know how to do rsyncs and all the other tools that we have to use in our workflow, since we're moving data between systems, between file systems, and it also handles failures in a way it provides a softer landing for the users. They're not having to worry about finding data files or going back and resubmitting scripts. The tool kind of takes care of that. All right, so what does this look like together? This is basically the workflow. On the left is Oakridge, on the right is GFDL. In the middle here is the network that hits them together. And there are basically 4 phases in the workflow. Phase 1 data is staged out from GFDL, from the archive into Gaia, staged into the LTFS as our long-term fast scratch. Kicks off another job which pulls the data out of LTFS onto FS, and then starts the second half of phase 2, which basically the segment runs. And as the segment runs are scheduled, they actually start phase 3, which is the transfer back to GFDL. And this is all automated, managed by X509, and the workflow is managed through MOAB and our free workflow manager. So those two things work together to keep all this running. And like I said, we have these job streams running for months on end. And then at the end, in phase 4 here, the post-processing cluster that's local at GFDL has its own, another instance of MOAB that actually runs automated post-processing that gets started from Oakridge. And the job streams are carried across both sites. So this is kind of a high-level overview of how this is all put together. And yeah, and basically in the 4 phases there. So this is just another ocean surface wave simulation that came out of the science that we run on Gaia and the newer models that we're running at NOAA. And if anyone has questions, I'll take them.